panel discussion, which is Women Entrepreneur and Leadership, Building Businesses Brick by Brick. Very important. Ms. Vandana Saxena Poria, serial entrepreneur, speaker, charter member, TIE Pune, is a disruptive visionary, master storyteller, and curator who awakens and ignites organizations and people by instantly altering mindsets and perceptions. As the human alarm clock, she assists individuals in recalibrating the internal compasses and also to create transformed workplaces which amplify growth and profit with purpose. Vandana started her first startup in 1997, which was sold a year later to a listed company. Since then, she created and ran the international division for a listed company and built her own company in India. She raised funds and then exited later again. She was honored with the equivalent of Padma Shri and OBE from Her Majesty, the 2008. This year, she was voted in the top 100 influencers between the UK and India. Vandana is the advisor to the Institute of Chartered Accountants, England and Wales in India, and non-executive director of the UK-India Business Council. Ladies and gentlemen, can we have Ms. Vandana Saxena, the first panelist for today? Thank you so much. We have Ms. Preeti Khare, CEO, Leela Poonawalla Foundation. Preeti is a dynamic young leader who believes that investing in girls' education creates strong women leaders for the organizations and for the society at large. She carries over 19 years of experience in leading non-profit organizations, corporate social responsibility, human resources, sales, and consulting. Preeti currently serves as the CEO of Leela Poonawalla Foundation, a seasoned non-profit organization established in 1995 by Padma Shri Mrs. Leela Poonawalla with a mission of women empowerment through professional education and employability skills building. LPF empowers financially challenged but meritorious girls through scholarship, skill building programs, and industry exposure. Preeti holds a management degree in human resources from Mumbai University. She is a certified CSR professional, a leadership coach. She is a recipient of many CSR leadership and excellence awards. She is a regular speaker at conferences and workshops on subjects like diversity and inclusion, corporate nonprofit partnerships, and employee volunteering. Her happiness mantra is live in the moment and live for the moment. Thank you so much, Preeti. We have the second panelist, Ms. Preeti. Thank you. Moving on, we have Ms. Pradanya Godbole, who is the CEO of D. Asra Foundation. Ms. Pradanya Godbole is the CEO of D. Asra Foundation, which is a non-profit organization formed to contribute to the social welfare by enabling entrepreneurship. Her vision is to simplify the whole entrepreneur process by helping entrepreneurs to think about business in a more structured and predictable manner. As the CEO of the Astra, Ms. Godbole has taken the foundation to new levels with her new zeal and enthusiasm. By applying her corporate learning on technology, processes, and scale to the activities of the foundation, she is leading the team to foundation's first goal of facilitating the creation of 25,000 enterprises by March 2020. Ms. Godbole has completed her engineering from MIT College and holds a master's degree in computer science from the Technical University of Nova Scotia, Canada. A techie at heart, Ms. Godbole has got a placement while pursuing her master's degree and started her career as a software engineer in Cognos, an Ontario-based company making business intelligence and performance management software. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome the third panelist today, Ms. Pradanya Godbole. Moving on, we have Ms. Sharmila Bhide, founder, House Cars. It's not the same Delhi House Cars that we know all about. It's a different one, and it's a very unique initiative that we have. House Cars, she's a co-founder and CEO of Carlsoft Incorporation. Sharmila Bhide is the founder of India's first online B2B food aggregator. Housecars was founded in 2016, and today it serves more than 100 active companies in Pune. Sharmila is also the co-founder and CFO of Calsoft, a premier deep technology IT services company founded in 1998. Today, Calsoft is a 1,000 plus employees and with offices in Pune, Bangalore, and the US. Sharmila Bhide holds an MBA degree from the Yale School of Management and is a chartered accountant. Thank you, ma'am. And as a moderator of this panelist, we have none other than Dr. Apurva Palkar, Director, Innovation, Incubation, and Linkages. Like I said, it's such a long list that I can't even finish reading, but I'll definitely talk about her achievements because she's done a tremendous job. Dr. Apurva Palkar is a startup specialist and transformational expert, and we know that better after we heard her speech. She's currently working as a Director, Innovation, Incubation, and Linkage at SP Pune University. She has spearheaded large-scale international projects with various governments and been active in policy-making, framework, and development of research. She is a mathematics graduate, an MBA, and alumnus of IIMA, and PhD in business administration. She's a part of State Higher Education Council, which is the SHEC, an apex body that works on enhancing quality of higher education in the state of Maharashtra. She has been part of State Startup Policy Committee, Skill Policy Committee at Maharashtra, and she works as a convener, Task Force Globalization of Higher Education. She's been awarded the prestigious Ravi J. Mathai Fellow Award and Higher Education Leadership Award by Higher Education Forum. She's been part of international accrediting bodies like ABBSP Spain, AACSB USA, both as member of board of AMDISA. She has authored more than 5 books in marketing management and social media marketing, published more than 25 research papers in referred journals, 8 students, and have been awarded the PhD under her guidance. Editor of 2 research journals. Let's welcome Dr. Apurva Palkar. Thank you so much.
So we start with this panel discussion, which is having real powerful women here with me. When we speak of entrepreneurship, especially for women, the kind of thought that we really have in India, and for generations this has been there, and that's been a livelihood entrepreneurship, which has been in the DNA of India for a very, very long time. But when we think of leadership, leaders who have created businesses in India, we have a handful of them. The name that comes to my mind whenever I think of entrepreneurship is the likes of Kiran Majumdar-Shah. We have a lot of Nita Ambanis, we may have a lot of Sudha Murthy's, but we have very few Kiran Majumdar-Shahs. And we really need to create Kiran Majumdar-Shahs, not that she's the only person, that's the name that comes to my mind. But I'm sure the panel sitting here will excite the girls sitting in this room, women sitting in this room, to get on to this particular space. We have Vandana with us, who's been an entrepreneur and serial entrepreneur, I would say, and she's been an entrepreneur cross-border. I would just like to ask you the first question, Vandana, as to what excited you, being a chartered accountant, what excited you to get into entrepreneurship?
So hello, can you hear me? Yeah. So it's really funny because I never wanted to be a chartered accountant, never. I actually wanted to be a marine biologist, but growing up in the UK with a very traditional Indian father, he said doctor, lawyer, or accountant. Those were my choices. But my, thank you. But my, hello? Hello? Yeah. Okay, well, this is better. My parents were probably my first influence. My parents moved from India to the UK in the 60s. And although my parents were both very well educated, when they got to the UK, they had 3 jobs. So they had their day job. In the evenings, they used to sell tickets for greyhound racing. And at the weekends, they used to import artifacts from India and sell them at a local market. So my entire childhood, what I remember is my parents just being busy all the time. But the other thing that I noticed was that they never took risks. Like, at the time when a lot of their friends were saying, hey, this import-export thing is working, let's expand it, my parents were very much, no, let's stay in a government job, and we'll do this on the side. So I never saw them taking risks. Because they weren't there a lot of the time, I would find ways to amuse myself. So when I was a teenager, I learnt palmistry, right? And I suddenly started getting people saying, oh, will you read my palm? Which I did. And then I got people saying, oh, I'll pay you to read my palm. So that was my first entrepreneurship-like journey. And I thought, wow, I can do this. And then I started making things, you know, making like folders and designing them, and people were paying. So I think I was kind of the accidental curious person who thought, well, you know, either I sit at home and watch the television, or I try this, and if it doesn't work, I'll just do something else. So I think seeing my parents and also having this insatiable curiosity to try different things and take a few risks, I think that's what I'd say.
Preeti, you've been leading a social enterprise. How did you go about leading this social enterprise? How did you do that?
Check, hello, check. That's all right. Well, this is the new venture for me, leading a social enterprise. I had been always in the corporate world, you know, part of consulting world for almost about 19 years. This organization, which is the Leela Poonawalla Foundation, I mean, most of you all must be aware about it, which is founded by Padma Shri Mrs. Leela Poonawalla, have been impacting like more than 9,300 plus girls so far, and we can proudly say that these girls are part of the entire globe, where you can see them being research scientists, to the open heart surgeons, to the you know, the professors of the universities, to the entrepreneurs, and also to you know, different corporate leaders. Well, I stepped in just about 9 months ago, exactly 9 months ago, to take this organization forward with Mrs. Poonawalla and the founding trustee and the team, to make it not just sustainable, to grow it from here. And I had an inclination to get into the non-profit sector when I met Mrs. Poonawalla first time through our partnership from Amdocs, where I was heading the corporate social responsibility. And 6 years ago, when I met her for the first time, I thought something or other in my life I would want to do with this lady. And I think I got this opportunity to be transitioning into the non-profit sector and kind of working with her to take the foundation forward. Well, when I started understanding what non-profit sector really means, and non-profit world really means, I realized it is definitely different from the corporate side. There are two different, I would say two different sides of the coin, as much as my intent was to really make it as almost like a one side of the coin, which technically not possible, but in reality it is possible. So I started looking at, of course, the big picture of the organization, which is related to not only impacting the communities, but also to do with what stakeholders is looking for. And the stakeholder in our language is majorly the corporate partners. So redefining the entire meaning of corporate partnership, aligning to their shared values and goals and objectives to ours, and then defining the entire strategy and plan, whether it's a fundraising you know, plans, to developing the teams to be able to be in line with working with the stakeholders, to really looking at how we create, the impact stories that we are creating, how we making it more visible, you know, in the society at large. So for me, it has been evolving journey, and like as I said, I'm just a newcomer to this particular domain, and look forward to kind of you know, have this experience and take this foundation forward along with all the entire stakeholders. Thank you.
I come to Sharmila now. Sharmila, with the kind of background that you have and the kind of education that you did, what really brought you into entrepreneurship now that you have two ventures? Could you really guide the audience in terms of what made you get into this?
Sure. So, I was thinking about this a few months ago, and funnily enough, I'm a second generation entrepreneur. My dad was a real rags to riches kind of entrepreneur. He had a manufacturing company called DMEC in Pune, which is still there. And so I grew up in the dinner table conversations were about uh, whether it was union strikes or this order, we lost it or we got it, or the highs and lows of entrepreneurship. That was just part of everyday life, the perks along with the tensions. So after basically we were in the US working out, then moved back to India to join my father, and that didn't work out. In 6 months, we realized we were not, neither my husband and I were of the manufacturing. We were not comfortable in that setup. So I called CalSoft, the first startup, as an accidental entrepreneurship out here. We were almost ready to move back, and this was in '97 when outsourcing was still relatively new, and this one of the HP, one of the companies out there, they reached out to Anupam saying that, hey, we need this work done out here. I know you moved to India. Would you guys like to get it done from there? And so we actually had, and HP wanted to issue a purchase order to us, and we didn't have a company incorporated, or we didn't even have a name of a company. So we came up with CalSoft on the fly. I had a PO in the name of CalSoft before CalSoft was incorporated, and we just fell into it and grew it from there. So that was like not really well planned. It was an accidental. We fell into it, and luckily things worked out. On the other hand, Housecast was an absolute initiative. I mean, it was a conscious decision to do to start Housecast, and it was just I wanted to be. So when you're working with your husband, there's always a little bit of compromise on whether the direction of the company, the philosophy related to the employees, or anything, right? And so these compromises. Sure, it was. I mean, you learn a lot more, and you are that much richer. But I wanted to do something which was my baby, my decisions, mine to succeed, mine to fail out here, and that was one of the main reasons I started Housecast for it.
Wow, that's really inspiring. Pradnya, I met you when you joined in Deasra. From therein, there has been, building brick by brick to such a huge target that you have ahead of you. How did you go about doing and building these blocks?
Okay, so it's been a real great journey. 6 years back is when we started thinking about this, and when I say we, Dr. Anand Deshpande of Persistent, he wanted to do something for society, and that's where the journey started. And I was just coming out of my IT mode to do something different and to do something more fulfilling. And that's when, the first thing that happened was the identification of need. What is that big problem statement that needs to be solved, which is going to continue for many years, and where we can have a big impact. And then and even now, the biggest need for the country is job generation and job availability for the youth that's coming into the working age population. So that's really the need that got identified, and we started working towards finding what we could do for it. So that's number one. The second thing that we did was we pulled a number out of the hat and said, okay, let's think big. Let's say we want to help 25,000 entrepreneurs by 2020 to succeed. And if they succeed, obviously the jobs will happen. So we flipped our focus from a job seeker to a job creator and said, let's look at job creation at scale, the job creator side at scale, and let's provide everything that a small business entrepreneur requires, and let's provide this to 25,000 entrepreneurs by 2020. Happy to report it's now 55,000 entrepreneurs, and we haven't reached 2020 yet. So that's the second thing. So establishing of the goals to reach the vision and reach the mission. Once we decided on the number, we started looking at the strategy, and we went out and we sort of did a study to say what are the challenges out there for somebody who is a small business and trying to succeed or trying to grow or trying to even set up. And we went out and we spoke with a lot of different entrepreneurs. We spoke to a lot of aspiring entrepreneurs. We spoke to government. We spoke to banks. So we spent almost 2 years in figuring out what the challenges are and where the solutions need to be. And that too for scale, right? So that number really drove our entire strategy in terms of what we wanted to do. And we found, of course, everyone sitting over here may be facing some of the challenges, access to funds, access to market, lack of business training, lack of information available in terms of what's required to run a business, how do I manage my finances, am I doing the right things? Those are all the challenges that we found entrepreneurs facing. And so the fourth thing that we did was took these problems and started finding solutions to them. And we took them one at a time, and we found that, as my fellow panelists were saying, businesses are not really planned. They don't start with a plan. You just jump into it, you start doing it, and then you realize that, oh, okay, I needed to think about certain things. So, that was the first thing that we started doing, and we started creating these business models, which an aspiring entrepreneur could use when starting off, or somebody in the business could use to see what hadn't been thought of and needed to be thought of. And so on and so forth. To each of the challenges that I spoke about, we started finding solutions to it. And of course, to do all of this, we needed a team. So that was the fifth thing that we did in parallel. We started building out a team, a very collaborative team, coming from different sectors. So as you know, with my technical background, I had no experience in the social sector, in the development sector, and in the entrepreneurial sector. So we pulled in a lot of talent from these various sectors, from banks, from government, from the actual team members who had lots of information, lots of dedication, and like you spoke, were aligned to the cause, aligned to the mission. So that was the fifth thing we did, and I think these are the 5 blocks that we really
Fantastic,
put together.
fantastic. So Sharmila, we understand that it was that inner zeal in you that brought you into, this particular space where you wanted to do things your way. So, so I just have one small question. How did this journey of ideation to actualization? Because a lot of times we think of things, but when we actually get into practice, there is a huge bit of challenge. So how did you go about doing this?
You know what? I think that's an excellent question. 20 years later, you forget about the first few years when the first thought came into your mind to actually it became a POC and became a real business. Yeah, sorry. Basically, the background is CalSoft is running. We have a team of senior VPs, directors reporting to me, 1,000 people out here. You're sitting in these ivory towers out there making decisions, doing no hands-on work. It's a comfort zone. Why risk all this to start something on your own? And so it's a mind versus a sort of your cerebral side versus your emotional side, whether to go ahead and take the plunge or not. I wanted to do a house cast. There were 10 different reasons along the way why I should not do it, why I should abandon it at various stages of life and just, you know what, it's okay. Let me just go back to CalSoft. I'm reasonably doing well out there, and why stake at this stage of my life, it's probably staking my reputation and everything that was there. So there was a lot of back and forth. The business plans and all the thing, today when I think about it, it really doesn't matter as much out here. You can project, you can do your 5-year thing, everything out here. In reality, once you start, you will pivot at least once for sure, maybe twice along the way to really find the right balance of what works out here. So all that financial part and everything was all fine. Yes, I should go and jump about it, but at least 2-3 times I seriously thought of pulling the plug and saying, no, you know what, let me abandon the idea. But we went ahead. We started as a B2C company, being one of a kind food provider to people at homes. Pivoted to the B2B model out here, and I think this is the place where we are finding a lot of traction, and this is probably the place where, I'm sure there'll be a couple of more pivots along the way, but today this is where we've kind of stabilized. So yeah.
Yeah, great. Well, now I have a question, because you've been someone who's been in India, you've been in UK, have experience. Now you was mentioning also you're doing a lot of work in Australia as well as the other part of Europe. How did you see that there was some difference in terms of cultures in a startup, in the space, outside India and within India?
Okay, so I want to caveat this by saying that I was a CA, chartered accountant. I'm now a CA, which is a chief alarmist, because my company is the Human Alarm Clock. And my whole thing is to disrupt thought processes. So I am going to say some controversial things, and I'd like your forgiveness in advance for being controversial. The one thing that I would say is, so I sold my first company when I was 27, and at that time, it hadn't even occurred to me that I was a female who had done it, right? It just wasn't even in my vision, right? When my then boss said, we want to buy your company and we want to set up an international division and we want you to run it and we want you to expand operations to 15 countries, not once did I question, I'm a woman and how could they give this to me? All I questioned was, this was pre-Google, right? This was back in 97, was, would I have the resources to do it? And did I have the knowledge and experience to do it? That's what I questioned. Very quickly, it hit me that the world doesn't see you like that. So when I became the CEO of the international division and I went into the next country, so I moved from Romania to Poland, and this is, again, I think Poland's changed a lot, but in Poland, back in 1999, I faced every ism you could think of, right? I would say there was sexism, there was racism, there was ageism. I had people saying, where's your boss? How can you be the CEO of the international division? I had colorism, I had, you name it, I faced it. And that was really tough. And it was also tough because I was young and I had lots of people working for me and I didn't have the answers, right? And so, but I never questioned my position as a woman. When I came to India, though, it was a completely different ballgame. Everywhere I went, it was like, who's looking after your children, right? And this is 2005 when I set up my business, right? When I would go into mainly Indian national or multinational companies, the men would always be, so you run this business with your husband? That was the first, question. And then, but you live in Pune and we're in Delhi, so who's looking after your children? And I could never bring myself to say, well, actually, my husband is. I had to say, my mother is. Otherwise, I would get completely disapproving looks. Now that was back then. I think things have changed a lot since then, but I have had those challenges. And the other cultural thing that I found very difficult is that I do believe, and I've honestly, for the last 10 years, this is all I've been studying, is why don't we have that entrepreneurial mindset that seems to happen to Indians when they go out of India, right? And Sharmila, I'm sure you'll get this. It doesn't matter what kind of mindset you've got in India, but when you go out of India, suddenly you can do all these things. My ex-husband's family are all from the villages in Gujarat, but when they went abroad, they started businesses, they did really, really well. Yet the family back here are still in the villages. So what's the difference? And what I realized the difference was we have a very patriarchal, hierarchical mindset here, where we do not question, we do what, and it's changing, like I said, but that has been a real hindrance to me within businesses because it's been very difficult to recruit people who will think outside the box, who will use that critical thinking, et cetera, until I've sent them to another city and they've kind of lived and worked somewhere different. I think it is to do with comfort zone. I think things are changing a lot, but that's, I think the biggest thing that we can learn, and especially women, we love being martyrs, right? We love, being there for our families and our mother-in-laws and our father-in-laws and our husbands and everyone. And so we put ourselves right at the bottom. But we've got to kick that and come out of that comfort zone and take risks and try things that are different, I think, in order to succeed. And that's what I've seen abroad. I've seen that happen, that the women, will say, no, I can't come and see you this weekend to their in-laws. I'll see you next weekend. Because I've got these things to do. That's been one of the biggest things.
I totally agree with what you said. I experienced that as well, the culture and then the education also. One is the culture, of course, the education setup also in India, which drives people to think in a specific manner. When I had my daughter go to UK and come back to me saying that, no, I will do things my way, a very introvert girl, but comes back to me saying that I know what I want to do in my life. So that's probably cross-border culture, which really brings in. Preeti, I have you've been on two sides of the table. One in Amdocs, where you are actually in the CSR side, where you're giving things. And Leela Foundation, where Leela Poonawalla Foundation, we have to actually go and reach out to people to get things. So how have these two roles been for you in your life?
Well, first change is from the corporate world to a non-profit world. And the second change is leading a function of the organization to leading an organization itself. I think these two are completely different worlds. When I decided to move on to take this role, to be a leader in the non-profit, the first thing I told to myself that I want to lead like a woman. And that's what I was sharing with you as well, that, I don't have to lead like a man. I don't have to lead like anybody else. I want to lead like a woman. And of course, having the role models like, Mrs. Poonawalla herself around me, it adds into, this belief totally. What else is important is basically to look at, and rather I had looked at, is that what will help me to build these relationships, right? Relationship with the corporates where they are going to be givers and we will be takers. But I redefine that relationship, saying that instead of looking at ourselves as a grantor and grantee, can we look at ourselves as a strategic partner? And that's what really helped me, not just to redefine that on a piece of paper, but to actually action it out along with all our partners. The second most important thing that I have enhanced my competencies is on emotional intelligence. And that is really, really important, especially when you are dealing with a multi-stakeholder environment. And I think that advice I would like to give it to the startups and the entrepreneurs here as well, that it's extremely important for you to build that quotient and then build the relationship, because that's going to take you further. Well, this job is not a 5 days job like in corporate. This doesn't pay a big fat salaries. This is not a walk to work job, which I was having it in Amdocs earlier. This job is a 24/7 job. And with this job, what else is important is to really try to manage yourself. When I say yourself, I being a women leader, I also would have the family. I do have my own passion. I'm a half marathoner, so I do run as well. There are multiple facets of me that I would want to kind of keep intact while leading the organization, not really necessarily compromising on the other side of me or other side of my facets. So that's my advice to the entrepreneurs and the young women leaders too, that live in the moment, right? It's very, very important. Enjoy all sides of the facets, and like as I said, lead like a woman.
Pradnya, yeah, I know it's the most toughest job to be a CEO in an organization where you are driven by targets. Been one for some time, for about 5 years, and I know how tough and challenging that it can get to, especially from an organization led by someone like Mr. Anand Deshpande, who has set very towering expectations in the society. How do you think that this target of 25,000 that you've set for yourself, you'll be able to thrive, and how are you going to do that?
Okay, thanks. So actually, like I said, 25,000 is now, we're past that.
You're past
So
that already.
but I think I'm really thankful that we set ourselves that bigger target, because all our planning and all our strategizing would have been very different had we said we'll take it as it goes, or had we said, okay, let's just do 1,000 in a year, right? We may not have thought of doing things in a digital manner for scale. We might not have thought about taking all mentor expertise and putting it on platforms and things like that. So I think having that number in front of us and having such a big number really drove our thinking to think big, to think of solutions that would address that bigger number. So that's one part of the thing. As you rightly said, I had no experience of being a CEO. A techie coming out of the tech world, similar experiences to Preeti. From a corporate cabin world, leading a business unit and coming out and becoming a CEO. There was absolutely, nothing that was taught to me in terms of, what you need to do to prepare for a CEO. Being a techie, again, not having experience around the SME sector, not having experience around government, not, access to funds and how difficult that is, all of that was completely new. But I think the essence and the real reason why all of this worked is because of the team that we were able to bring together, right? What I didn't have, so I had processes, data, I had the result-oriented thinking, all of those behaviors came as part of my corporate experience. What I lacked came from the outside world. So we got a lot of mentors from the financial domain. We got a lot of mentors from the government side. Our team was such that when we recruited for depth, but also for lateral thinking. So people who could do other things than just one specific expertise. And for a startup, I think that's very important. People need to be wearing different hats, not just myself, but everybody needs to be doing very different things whenever the requirement comes in. So, at a certain point in time, all of us used to move and, do outreach. At a certain point, we even went out and put billboards and things outside, and the team was ready to do it. So I think that passion that comes with the cause in the team really helped. The knowledge part got supplemented by expertise from outside, and being able to understand that I didn't need to know everything was very important. There were others there who were experts in different domains, and there's no way that I would become an expert in everything to understand, right? So I think that was a very important thing. The team also were recruited to be, ones who were doers and not just talk. People who could walk that talk, who went down right to the ground, went out to the field, talked to entrepreneurs as required. So really, doer kind of team members is what we have even today. And I think very simply, if I were to talk about team, if you look at it as the opposite way of team, M being the mission, and if you set the mission, and then A for alignment, you align everyone to the mission. In terms of the E, you empower the team to make decisions, to go out and do what they think is right, and you trust, right? It
Great.
forms a really good team.
Great, fantastic. Vanna, I will just try to get on to the personal traits. I see that you have real strong personal traits in terms of, leading successes as well as dealing with failures, which is very important for an entrepreneur. There are ups and downs for entrepreneurs. What would be your advice to everyone sitting here in terms of how to deal with success and failures?
So, what's really interesting again is we live in a very competitive world, right? Especially in India, right? Where so few university places, you've got to get this cut off. We try and do everything ourselves, right? We're taught to do everything ourselves. Where I grew up, right, we never heard the word failure, right? It just didn't exist. It was like, okay, you didn't do it, let's do it again. Let's try again. What did you learn from that? So that really altered my mindset. So when I came here and I saw so many people risk averse, like my staff didn't want to try and do things differently, I was like, it's okay, let's fail. And they were like, we can't do that, And what I would say to everyone is, you never fail. You just learn to do it differently, right? And it's that whole Edison thing, when Edison came up with the light bulb, a journalist said to him, how do you feel having failed to do this 1,000 times? He said, I never failed, I just took 1,000 steps, right? So that's all it was. So, but then having said that, we do have to look at reality, and the reality is 90% of businesses, 90% of entrepreneurs do fail. Their businesses do fail. I think it's something like 40% happen in the first year, and then 50% in the next 5 years, and then 10% thereafter. So those are horrible statistics, but Sharmila talked about it, right? If something's not working, you pivot. You look at how do you change things. And I think if I look back to the ventures of mine that failed, that, where I really had to just, and I've closed down businesses. I've had to, at one point I was given another team from the listed company that did language, and I had 10,000 people that I had to make redundant across Eastern Europe at one stage, because the business, the UK decided they wanted to close down the the language division. I never felt bad about closing it, but I felt bad about delaying that decision, right? So if you have a cancer in you, if something is not working, you can either just keep trying to put medicine on it and make it work, or you can say, look, this isn't working, let's cut it out. And sometimes you have to do that, right? And it takes a strong person to say, and there's a lot of ego and there's a lot of pride at stake. So I would say the thing to do is be persistent. You have to be persistent in what you're doing. But you have to be aware of what's happening in the market. Is there a problem with my market? Or is there a problem with the model that I have developed that's attacking that market? Do I have a goal, right? Have I set my goal too low or too high? What's the gap and how am I going to close it? But also, don't think you can do everything by yourself. And I think that's one of the big things that came out. We had Leela speak at a UN program yesterday, and she said the way she got to 9,500 girls was, you know, I think 3 or 4 years ago she was at 2,000, and it was through partnerships, right? As women, we're scared, we don't trust, we're worried. We've got to have faith. We've got to have faith in each other. We've got to have each other's backs. And I would encourage you, form a community of the people who are here today. We're all here. We're all so keen on mentoring people. Just call us up and talk to us if you've got a challenge, right? So failure, get failure out of your mind. Things are not going to work. We fail every day with things and we don't think about it. You know, how many of you have said, I'm going to lose weight this year? Do we say, oh my God, I failed? No, I mean, we don't, right? It's just, it's one of those things. Let's look at what didn't work and let's alter it.
Great answer. Sharmila, again, I would have this round on the personal traits, you know, in terms of leading an established organization and leading, the role of leader in terms of a real sense of a real startup and the leadership role at a very established organization. How are these two roles different?
Sure. So, again, doing Housecast for the last 3 years, I think things are becoming more clearer in my head as I go along. Recently we had an offsite for Housecast, and we are having an offsite for CalSoft now, and that's when it got me thinking. In a startup, things are constantly changing. There's this big overriding jigsaw puzzle that's being formed as you go along. As you pivot, the puzzle will get reshaped, undone, redone. Everything's happening all the time out there. You are working with the team very closely out here, so therefore, the nuggets of the pieces keep getting thrown to different people, and different people have different ideas about what today's thought is. I go jogging in the university, and then I come jogging here. It's beautiful. And I go back, and something has sort of worked in my head out. Then whoever the first person I meet, I say, you know, this is what we should be doing, or something like that. So it's important in this startup environment, the first few years before you get to like 100 people or whatever it is, to that communication, that taking stock, maybe having your strategy thing or whatever it is more often, and just sort of get back, rein in a bit and tell people, okay, this is where we stand today and this is what the picture is and this is what is happening. It's very easy to rub your passion to the people because you're working with them all the time. So that motivating, fire and everything, that gets translated very easily. It's more this picture that is getting formed, the communication, the alignment of goals of everyone, how they see where the organization is going, that needs to be done at a regular interval. CalSoft on the other side is a well set up company, has that big mission and the jigsaw puzzle is all in place and everything. So that is all very good. But it's difficult to communicate the passion, the fire, the energy, the trying to create more stars in the organization all the way down. As you grow bigger, you realize that you start off when you're surrounded by a team of people who are all like you and multitasking, and I call them stars. And then as you become bigger and bigger, you start filling them with the normal people, the 9-to-5ers and everything, which is okay. I mean, you can't have 100% of your company with stars. But getting those 9 to 5 years also to be excited and energized and all that, I find a bigger challenge at CalSoft. So both have their own pluses and minuses.
I think this brings me to a question to Preeti, because this has been the personal experiences. But when you look at a lot of girls, when you are trying to groom them at a very early age, I guess you start grooming them at as early as 18 or
At the school level also. From
school
the school
level
level,
also.
then the college level.
So the kind of, and the number that Vandana just spoke is 9,500, which is a very, very big number. Do you think you're able to consciously make them think about careers in the long run? Or do you see that there are any issues and challenges? Because they come from, the not so economically strong families, but intelligent girls that you have.
Absolutely. So the success stories or the examples that I talked about, whether of Meena, who is associate director at Cognizant, or Janvi, or many such examples that I just talked about earlier, definitely does talk about the fact that these girls who are coming from a very economically challenged background, but they have a fire in their belly, and I think we catch them young. We catch them young from the school level, invest in them through counseling, counseling to their parents, really making them understand the importance of having them lead their life, not just their career, but their entire life further, right? And then when we reach to a level where we start investing them in, through different set of skills building programs. So whether it's a life skills building, or whether it's employability skills building, corporate readiness programs, industry exposure visits, mentoring from the leaders from the different corporates, all of these inputs make our girls much more confident, much more stronger. And essentially we have seen the statistics says that around 65 to 70% of our girls who are passing out from the colleges are able to get the respectable employment in the mainstream industry. About 15-20% do go for a higher education, and it's good to also aspire for that. I think what is important to see is that these girls not only become great leaders for the organization like many, but they actually become a great societal leaders. They become a great family people. They become, a great mentor for the young generations of Leela Poonawalla Foundation, and they give back to the foundation. They give back to the society. So essentially, we are creating the women leaders for the society at large than just focusing on the women leaders for the organizations. And all these stories talk very highly about it. Yes.
Quick last question for Pradnya here. Pradnya, what is that one personal trait that you think, or maybe some multiple traits that you have, that made you feel that you're the right choice to lead this organization?
Wow, that's a difficult one. Okay, so I think like I said earlier, the ability to sort of get a whole different set of people together and be people focused and really do a lot of collaborative and consensus-based work. I think that is where I think the ASRA as such is a collaborative environment. It is an entire ecosystem of players. And we have, connections with training institutions, governments, other partners, education partners, foundations. The team goes from the age of 21 to 65. So, having a big range over there. Our leadership team, our middle management is mostly women. Having to manage this entire different personality traits, people are there all aligned for a cause, but having different other motivations for being there, right? All of them for social good, but other things, so the seniors like to be there because they feel young and, they're working with the juniors are there to really learn and build a career. So there's all these different aspirations. And really being able to look at all of this and bringing it all together, I think is what works for the ASRA.
We'll have one small rapid fire for this beautiful gathering. One liner on what leadership, according to you, is.
Okay, maybe I can go. Yeah, so because it's rapid fire, I'll just say lead from within, be confident, believe in yourself. I think that's the mantra that I would suggest.
Basically, basically just inspire people. I think inspiration is the main story. Yeah.
I think for me, being significant is more important than being successful, and that's the leadership mantra for me.
I think be comfortable with being uncomfortable, push the boundaries, and build your ecosystem to succeed?
Wow, fantastic. That was really great. Thank you so much. Do we have time for question answers or no?
Yeah, we can have two questions from the audience. And once of all, a big thanks for such an insight, beautiful, creative innovation. And Vanna, it's so nice to hear such brilliant words talking about, be comfortable with the uncomfortable. I think that's something that we need to learn, and so beautifully talked about. We need to also maintain that balance and also donning different hats, but we also need to ensure that there is me time that we have for ourselves, which we mostly as women, I think we kind of miss that. So over to the audience, we can only take two questions. If anybody wants to ask questions to the enterprising women here. Mic dena padega. I would love to have more questions. I'm sure there is so many questions that you would have while you're joining this journey of entrepreneurship, or people who are planning even to start off something new. No questions? Yeah, okay, perfect. So you would have a tea break and you can interact and get, as you know, Wanda had opened it to the audience, that it's open for mentorship, so you can actually reach out to them if you really want mentorship and guidance. I would request the panelists to be on the stage and request Dr. Palkar to felicitate the panelists and speakers for such a wonderful speech. Can we have a big round of applause? Thank you. Thank you. And can I invite Ms. Meenal Kothari, co-founder of Billennium Divas Fund, to felicitate Dr. Palkar? Thank you. A big round of applause for all the panelists once again. Thank you so much.